breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for us. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Chris Cichon. He does absolutely tremendous work over at WBAL in Baltimore. We're going to be chatting with him about what we've all seen out of the Baltimore Orioles thus far this season, the landscape of the American League playoff picture, and just some of the teams that he's feeling a little bit bullish/bearish on as well. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Tuesday as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions, everything is powered by Edge Boost. Edge Boost is making sure that bettors are able to access their funds that they want to anywhere, anytime. 100% of gambling transactions, they are all approved. You get cashback rewards as you utilize Edge Boost, and when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gives you a $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's take a look back at everything that we saw in baseball on Monday. Try to find the trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The San Diego Padres get shut out by the Philadelphia Phillies. This by a count of 4-0 as for the Phils, Zach Wheelan and Dylan Wheeler. Well, he was wheeling and he was dealing. 8 scoreless innings, 7 punch-outs. Tanner Banks, a scoreless inning from there, and Nick Castellanos was able to go deep off of Matt Waldron for his 10th home run in the campaign. For Waldron, first start of the year wasn't necessarily what he was hoping for. He gives up 4 runs in 4 2/3 innings. Wandy Peralta from there, 1 1/3 innings scoreless. And David Morgan, who's been pretty solid in this Padres bullpen, he was able to lend 2 scoreless innings. Your top under team in all of baseball is the Texas Rangers. Things got very overwhelming and extras for them, though, as for the Texas Rangers, they fall by a count of 10-6 in 11 innings, as this game was 3-3 going into extras. You had the Orioles plate 3 runs in the 10th inning, with Gunnar Henderson being able to get a home run, and then Adolis Garcia was able to get home run number 10 of the campaign in the 10th inning to extend things. Earlier in the game, Marcus Semien, he went deep off of Trevor Rogers, his 8th home run season as Rogers. Solid start, 2 runs allowed in 5 1/3 innings. Sir Anthony Dominguez from there, 5 outside the bullpen scoreless. Brian Baker, Felix Bautista, both on a scoreless inning, and Andrew Kittredge, he had a scoreless 11th inning for Keegan Aiken. Gave up that home run in the 10th, 3 runs, 2 of which were earned on his end, and for Gunnar Henderson, went deep off of Robert Garcia, 10th home run season, and you had Sean Armstrong in the 10th inning, giving up to Colton Cowser, his 7th home run of the campaign. Patrick Corbin, not a great start, but not a bad one. 6 punch-outs, 3 runs allowed in 6 innings. Jacob Webb, Chris Martin from there, both on his scoreless inning, and then Robert Garcia, 2 runs, 1 of which was earned, allowed in his inning of work. You had Sean Armstrong give up a home run in his inning, and Hobie Milner in the 11th inning, 4 runs, 3 of which were earned. So things got overwhelming out there for the San Francisco Giants. It is overwhelming the amount of losing that they've been doing recently. As for the Giants, they are now 1-7 in their last 8 games. A fall to the years on the Diamondbacks by a count of 4-2. Logan Webb, 3 runs allowed in 6 1/3 innings, including a home run to Lourdes Gurriela's 11th home run in the campaign. And then you had Mr. Rogers, Tyler Rogers, giving up to Eugenio Suarez, 26th home run in the campaign. Rogers gives up that home run in his inning work, and Randy Rodriguez, pair of outside the bullpen scoreless. Ryan Nelson, solid start here, 6 2/3 innings, allows 2 runs for Arizona. And then John Curtis with 2 S's, along with Juan Murillo, they come in for a scoreless inning between the two of them, and Shelby Miller, he gets a final 4 outs of the game scoreless. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, they continue to roll. How about 37 runs scored in their last 4 games in their 4-game win streak, 7-0. They blanked the St. Louis Cardinals. Eric Fetty got whopped. 7 runs allowed in 5 innings, including a home run to Spencer Horwitz, 2nd home run on the campaign. John King, Matt Savanson were able to combine for 3 scoreless innings, and for the Pirates, a really good pitching performance here from Andrew Heaney. 6 2/3 innings scoreless. Chase Shoger from there, 2 1/3 innings, allows 1 hit, no earned runs. And there is not a lot of scoring from the Kansas City Royals, who they are your lowest scoring team in all of baseball, 6-2. They fall to the Seattle Mariners, for the Mariners. Big dumper Cal Raleigh, his league-leading 33rd home run of the campaign, and Randy Arozarena goes deep twice for home runs number 9 and 10 of the campaign for Arozarena. He takes Michael Wacha deep twice, and for Michael Wacha, dying Pac-Man voice, he was more like Michael Waka 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 Waka. 5 runs allowed in 5 innings. Daniel Lynch gives up this home run to Cal Raleigh in his 2 innings of work. Lucas Erceg a scoreless inning, and for the Seattle Mariners, George Kirby on point in this one. 1 run allowed in 6 innings. Trent Thornton allows a run in an inning, and Gabe Spire, Matt Brash, they were both able to give you a scoreless inning. You were able to get quite a bit of production out of the Boston Red Sox offense, and none from Chase Burns. 13-6 the final as Chase Burns in his first career road start, 7 runs, 5 of which were earned, including a home run to Trevor Story, his 12th home run in the campaign. From there, Jarren Duran off of Joe LaSorsa, his 6th home run in the campaign. LaSorsa, he gives one up as well to Wyler Abreu, who wiles out 15th home run in the campaign, and then you had home run number 16 of the season. That comes off of Connor Phillips. For Phillips, he allows 4 runs in his 2 innings of work. LaSorsa gave up 2 home runs in his 2 2/3 innings. Brent Suter, 2 2/3 innings scoreless, and Jose Trevino, the catcher, gives you an out of the bullpen scoreless. Austin the Say's kid was able to go deep off of Garrett Crochet, 7th home run season, and for Crochet, not his sharpest performance, but more than enough to get the win with the run support. 5 runs, 4 of which weren't given up in 6 innings. Greg Weiser, along Jordan Nix, both on a scoreless inning, and Ori Alcala, he does come in for an inning. He allows a run along the way. The Blue Jays take it to the Yankees, who have now scored 4 runs or fewer in 15 out of their last 19 games. 5-4 the final is for the Yankees. Carlos Rodon, not a great start, not a bad start. 2 runs allowed in 5 innings. From there, Mark Leiter Jr. lighters it up. 3 runs, 2 of which were earned. He got 1 out of the bullpen. Tim Hill scoreless inning, and Jonathan Loaizaga 1 2/3 innings scoreless. Pair of bombs here for the Yankees. Cody Bellinger, 12th home run season off of Mason Flaherty, and Max Scherzer gives one up to Jazz Chisholm, his 14th home run of the season. Scherzer, not bad, not great. 2 runs allowed in 5 innings. Brandon Little gives up a run in an inning. Braden Fisher, Jeff Hoffman, both landed scoreless inning, and Mason Flaherty gives up a home run in his 3rd of an inning of work. But Chad Green, pair of outside the bullpen scoreless to shore things up. And then the Athletics, who have been one of your best over teams in all of baseball, they get overwhelming, and they overwhelm the Rays. 6-4 the final is for the Athletics. Jacob Lopez, not long for this game. 4 runs, 3 of which were given up in 3 1/3 innings, including a bomb to Mr. Junior Caminero, 21st home run in the campaign, but bullpen from there does their part. Michael Kelly, Sean Newcomb combined for a scoreless inning. Mason Miller, a scoreless inning, and JT Ginn Juice, 3 2/3 innings scoreless, and Shea Langolaris, Shea bangs a home run off of Drew Rasmussen, his 11th home run in the campaign. Rasmussen gives up 4 runs in 3 innings. From there, the bullpen was fine until Pete Fairbanks gives up 2 runs in an inning late in this one. Garrett Clevenger, a scoreless inning. You had Mason Montgomery coupled with Paul Gavassi combined for 2 scoreless innings, and Edwin Uceta, he was able to give you 2 scoreless innings of his own. And if you're taking a look at things trend-wise in Major League Baseball right now, overall for the season, the favorites are hitting at about 57.8%. Now, these were numbers that were coming into Monday, but 721 and 526 on the money line for favorites. Meanwhile, the under hitting at about 52.9%, 639 unders, so 569 overs. Last 7 days entering into Monday, the unders hitting at about a clip of 52.2%, 48 and 44, with the favorites going 48 and 45. So we have seen a lot of underdogs cashing, and that's what we all saw on Monday, and that's where we're getting trend-wise in Major League Baseball. Coming next, how about if we talk with one of our good friends, Chris Cichon, out there in the great city of Baltimore, talk about the Orioles, talk about this American League playoff picture, and so much more right here on the Baseball Betting Show. Myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Greg, you love you, Las Vegas, for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Chris Cichon aboard. He does great work over at WBAL in Baltimore, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. I know he does a little bit of everything over there in Baltimore. The Ravens are going to be reporting into training camp soon. He's all over that. If you're looking at the news and the happenings for all things in the Baltimore area, he does a great job on that front as well. And you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at The Big Cheese Show. That is CHEE on Chi before show. And Chris, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, thank you so much for that wonderful intro. And yes, certainly a timing where the Orioles could be making some sort of a move, maybe towards not having to trade some of their relievers and or position players in sell mode. Coming off a big series over the weekend against the Tampa Bay Rays where they took 2 of 3. So if they can have a big week this week, maybe we'll be some happy campers over there at WBAL when we're broadcasting the games this week. But thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And how about if we touch upon that first things first? Have you ever seen a more strange race than the American League wildcard? Because you mentioned it with the Orioles. They have the 3rd worst record in the American League, and they're 7 games out of a playoff spot right now. Like, typically, if you have the 3rd worst record in any sort of league at this point, you're north of 10 games out, you're down and out. But, I mean, with all these teams in the American League wildcard race, it feels like there's a whole bunch of mediocre and nobody that truly wants it.
Yeah, I mean, you got that right. And you've got a player like Dean Kramer for the Orioles stepping up. I mean, this is a guy you and I have talked about not having a whole lot of faith in as far as a starter for the Orioles in general. And there he goes and tosses outstanding baseball this past Sunday on a hot day against the Tampa Bay Rays team that is certainly capable of producing offense. But yeah, the Orioles look pretty good this past weekend. No doubt about it, being able to shut down some of the key bats for that Rays team. I know that Jonathan Aranda hit that shot to Utah Street. That was like the 3rd longest home run in Rays history, if I'm not mistaken. So he clobbered that one, certainly. But overall, you got to be happy with what you're getting out of the Orioles. And if you're looking at a team like the Tampa Bay Rays, they certainly have some solid pitching. I mean, Drew Rasmussen, Shane Baz, those 2 guys come to mind for me. If they get some of these guys like McClanahan back, they've got Boyle, from what I understand, down in the minor leagues. Who knows if he's going to be getting called up here, because Taj Bradley, I think he kind of is what it is at this point. Watching him, he had a lot of hype coming up. I think he's going to be an average starter, and that's kind of what it is. But yeah, the Rays and their bullpen, solid guys there. They're just going to be a team. And, they got rid of Randy Arozarena, and that was a decision where you were a little bit like, wow, this guy's the face of the team. He goes and, even the day that he was traded, he went into the left field and hung out with the Tampa Bay Rays fans and was listening to a Seattle Mariners game, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about how he wasn't able to catch up on a fastball anymore. So, the Rays know when these players are just not really getting it done anymore. And, they've got, guys stepping up like Curtis Mead and whatnot, and even guys like Taylor Walls, who I've thought is not necessarily an everyday player, brings something defensively, and he's doing pretty decently at the plate given some of his career numbers. And Danny Jansen's a power hitting catcher, so you wouldn't count the Rays out. The Yankees getting on them, you call them out pretty much every night. They're stagnant offense. They've had been playing to a ton of unders. It's just the team ultimately that, you've got Aaron Judge delivering. Jazz Chisholm's going to be able to get some more, but they're missing Garrett Cole there. And Clark Schmidt is a solid starter for them. They'll be in the mix, I think, when it comes to the American League East, winning the division probably, and then possibly representing the American League. I think when it comes to the odds, it's them and the Tigers, which is based on the standings, of course, too. And then, Boston's probably that team that's not going to be in the mix this year. They traded away Rafael Devers. I think that they were probably correct in saying forget it at this point. He's just not going to be a guy that is going to be fully committed to this team, given what we're paying him. And now they're looking at a situation where they had a lot of sluggers at one time, and now ownership's being on the frugal side there a little bit. So, if you're a Red Sox fan, you don't love to see that. And then Toronto is certainly in the mix. I mean, when is Anthony Santander going to come back? I mentioned that because, he's a guy who certainly played here and was one of the fan favorites, and the Orioles let him go. I know that they talked about having him start hitting somewhat soon. That would certainly help this offense. But, Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bichette and some of these guys, Springer, they've stepped up this year too. And, I know a guy like Kevin Gossman, who's, anchoring that rotation, has done a good job there. I wouldn't trust Jose Barrios every 5th day out there. But I see 4 teams really being in the mix. Well, let me take that back. I see 3 in the mix. The Orioles teetering, but eventually Mike Elias, I don't know where he's going to go, because Mike Elias, people are calling for his job in this town, but he's at a point where he can sell Felix Bautista and some of these relievers for a high price and get a nice return. So it remains to be seen what I think happens with the Orioles from here on out.
Yep, it is going to be very interesting to see what happens there. And you alluded to it. They could really use a big series out here in Texas, as we do have Chris Cichon doing great work over at WBAL in Baltimore and taking a look forward to Tuesday. I think I'm fair in saying this is a pitching mismatch, as you've got Charlie Morton going up against Jacob deGrom. I think that that's one of the more fair statements that this podcast is going to make, but how do you take a look at both the game on Tuesday and everything overall? Because Morton has been better recently. Not amazing, but better recently. And for this Texas Rangers team, the one thing that is a saving grace for the Orioles is that they are just not scoring this year.
Yeah, they have struggled a bit because they are not getting the production out of Gunnar Henderson on a day in, day out basis that they need to. Getting Colton Cowser back has been huge. I think about this past weekend where he had the leaping catch, robbing, may have been Curtis Mead, one of the Rays hitters, just a blast to left field there, and that was huge. Charlie Morton, his last 5 starts, 4-0, 2.42 ERA. So he is a guy that has, I guess, gotten his curveball going once again, and that's an effective pitch for him. Still, even at his age, because it wasn't really biting, I guess, in the beginning of the season. And that was something that Brandon Hyde, when he was the manager of the team, and then Tony Mansolino acknowledged. He's gotten into a groove there, and they've won the last 5 games that he started. We'll see if they're able to take one against Texas. You know, you're looking at a Texas team now that is not as strong as they were, certainly. I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that offensively when they won the World Series. But Jacob deGrom, as you mentioned it, I was watching this guy the other day, and he's lights out. He's looking exactly like he did during his Mets time, and you're looking at an Orioles team, too. He already took on the Orioles. That's right, deGrom. So, yeah, he just shut him down the last time on June 25th. That's right. Just watching him, it was a masterful performance when Texas won 7-0 in that one. And the Orioles, if I remember correctly, Jacob deGrom made Gunnar Henderson look silly. Jackson Holliday, I think, got a nice wood on a hit or two. Cedric Mullins wasn't necessarily getting it done. And the Orioles hitters, the X factors here that might be able to deliver a little bit, maybe Ramon Laureano. He is a guy that I've talked about, too, as somebody who can certainly deliver at the plate. Jordan Westburg has not necessarily been the same coming back, but Ryan O'Hearn's their top OBP guy. If he can get on, Gary Sanchez hits him up. I'm spinning the wheels a little bit, Greg, thinking about this Orioles lineup. I got to take that back. Against Jacob deGrom, no, I don't see Gary Sanchez going long, and any of these really hitters based on what I've been watching from him. He is ace-like at this point. And Brandon Young, when I've watched him, he hasn't been very good. If he can manage and get some ground ball outs and things of that sort, get it to a bullpen that's looked better at times. Brian Baker, guys like that. Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez. I don't trust them all the time, but they are veteran presences. Maybe they can get a little bit better, just as Charlie Morton has done. That's how the Orioles would win this game. But otherwise, as you mentioned, yeah, this is a very much mismatch, as Brandon Young is not a very good pitcher coming in with a 7.11 ERA. An undrafted guy at this point is just trying to fill a rotation spot at the moment with Zach Eflin hitting the injured list. And he was pretty much pitching batting practice anyway over the past weekend. So I can't imagine Brandon Young's much worse, but we'll see.
Yeah, it certainly has been a case where the big kryptonite for the Orioles has been sort of the pitching, as you alluded to. But how do you take a look at the offense as well? Because this has been a team that has had a little bit of a rough go of it, but you also alluded to it. There's been a lot of injuries for the Baltimore Orioles, and I think that getting back Jordan Westburg, Colton Cowser, guys have not been able to find it this year, but as well as I do, have been banged up. I think that there's a lot more promise right now in terms of the lineup rather than the pitching.
So, Greg, I would love to inform you that Charlie Morton has been pushed back to Friday in Atlanta with lower grade elbow tendonitis per Masson Rock 2 minutes ago. Yeah, it will be Brandon Young. That's why I guess I was talking about Brandon Young when it came up as the pitcher.
Hey, perfect. That helps me out.
All right, yeah, so there you go. We now have Charlie Morton injured at this point, and that is certainly another blow to this Orioles rotation, and now this team is going to certainly have to try and see when Kyle Bradish is going to be available, and I don't have any faith that Grayson Rodriguez is going to be coming back anytime soon, so they're going to have to piecemeal this one together a little bit here, get a lot more solid starts out of Dean Kramer, or just have the offense. We have Westberg, who's been kind of hurt too here recently, so hopefully for Orioles fans, Ramon Arias can maybe provide the production at the hot corner there, which he's done a pretty good job of this year. I was talking to my wife watching the Orioles game the other day. I said, if there's one hitter on the Orioles I really trust at the plate more oftentimes than not, it's Ramon Arias. I mean, he kind of does deliver it a lot of times. So, yeah, they're going to have to really try to overcome this one when they've got Brandon Young, who every time I've watched him pitch has been pretty brutal.
Yeah, that's not great to say the least. And if you're listening to this and you still have a 7 total, that might be a good look to the over. So that could be a nice redeeming quality there. As Chris Cichon, who does great work over at WBAL in Baltimore, is joining me on the Baseball Betting Show. And as we know, the Orioles are going to try to make some sort of playoff push. Right now, it's looking a little bit unlikely that they might be able to do so. But in terms of the American League, where we talked about it, it's just a big jumbled up mess. Is there a team or two that you think might be able to rise up and might be able to separate in what is a big, just sort of hodgepodge and log jam of teams that are sort of fighting for those final wildcard spots?
It's a great question. Watching some of these teams in the American League East, we know that they'll be kind of representing maybe one of the wild card spots there. I keep wanting to come back to Minnesota because ultimately I think that they've got some starters that can go deeper into games, and you're talking about a guy like Carlos Correa, who's hitting in the middle of that lineup, and he's got himself, a hitting streak. I mean, it's 5 games, but he's done a pretty decent job this year. I know that they just lost 2 of 3 to Detroit over the past weekend, and they are a sub 500 team at the moment. But, if you're looking at like a dark horse team, they still are going to have some matchups potentially with the Chicago White Sox and Kansas City, who's been a bit of a disappointment this year, too. And I know when you've got guys like Ty France who have been, up and down, but do provide some power. Same can be said about even like a Harrison Bader there. This is a team that I certainly think if they're able to get, it's just tough to trust a guy like Chris Paddock, right? They have a pretty decent bullpen as far as their options are concerned. It's just, again, their starters, and Bailey Ober, he has a lot of velocity down as well. So, yeah, it's a team that would need some help as far as their rotation is concerned. But I still would not count Minnesota out. I'll put them there. And then I would say as another team that I'm kind of liking too, I'll stay in the American League Central, and we'll go with the Kansas City Royals. I think I've talked to you about them too. I'm very much shocked that they've struggled this season, considering, again, I watched them against the Orioles in the playoffs when they were here at Camden Yards, and it was Michael Wacha being able to deliver and absolutely get it done against an Orioles lineup that was a lot more potent, we would say, last year when they did have Anthony Santander in the lineup. I mean, no one was really potent in the postseason last year. But, yeah, you're looking at a Kansas City team. They just had to play the Los Angeles Dodgers, so that's no fun. But they're 6 games under 500. If they're going to be making a move, this would be the time to do it. And I still think that if they have just, some down years from guys like, Salvador Perez had that incredible season. I didn't think we were ever going to see something like that again. And they just, I guess, don't have enough guys outside of Bobby Witt Jr. who are just getting on base enough to be able to generate enough run production. And, I like a guy like Chris Bubich too, but when you're going up against the best team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, and, you're going to be facing tough competition in the playoffs in the American League, he didn't look all that great there. They do have one of the best closers in the league, Carlos Estevez. So that's why I wouldn't count the Royals out if they're able to. You see that with a team like the San Francisco Giants in the National League. Winning one-run games is so important. That's how the Marlins have been getting it done somewhat recently as well, too. I think that if you're able to get to the Royals bullpen, perhaps, and have Estevez lock it down, he's got 22 saves going into Monday. That would be a situation where, yeah, I think that it's going to either be the Twins or the Royals as I'm making this argument. But, yeah, one of those two teams I think will still be in the mix because I think they've got enough veteran players and will be able to maybe make a move at the deadline with a team like the Orioles if they're able to get out of it. Because think about it, if the Royals win some games and then they acquired Felix Bautista and you had Estevez before Bautista, I don't know how it would work, but something like that. I mean, just get to those guys and you're going to have a shutdown into the game. And you just would need to count on some of the bats there for Kansas City who haven't necessarily delivered tremendously this year. But like I said, maybe it is something that, a guy like Jonathan India, you'd expect more out of him too. So yeah, I know I'm rambling about the Royals, but those would be my two teams to answer your question in the American League East.
Yep, and with the American League, I think that it is so interesting to take a look at those teams. If they just get any semblance of hitting whatsoever, to your point, I think that they're going to be able to rise up. And a man that always rises up and provides great content, a man that does a great job of being able to cover all things out there in the Baltimore Orioles. That would be you, Chris. You do an amazing job over at WBAL with a little bit of everything. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media to other platforms.
Thank you so much again, Greg, for having me on at the Big Cheese Show. We will be covering events leading up to the 4th of July in Baltimore, as well as looking at this series against the Texas Rangers. And Keith Mills also is going to be, he's one of the Orioles commentators on our program, interviewed a number of players. That's going to be a special on 4th of July, past and present on our station. That should be a lot of fun and nice memories to reflect upon on not such a great season, but we aren't quite at the trade deadline yet. That's when you really feel like it's a situation where it might be over for you. It's not over yet for the Orioles, so we keep the faith here in Baltimore at least. But Greg, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Chris doing an amazing job taking a look at baseball and so much more. And every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks, Chris, for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Tuesday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Visa Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Chris Cichon. He does such great work over at WBAL in Baltimore. Take a look at this great game of baseball that we all know and love. Every single time he joins me, he lends such amazing insights. Did so once again today. So a big thanks to Chris for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Tuesday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are indeed going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the National League games first, then the American League games, any interleague games. Those are going to be at the bottom. That'll keep things all nice, clean, and easy. So, how about if we do get things started with 901, 902 on the card? The San Diego Padres at third to face off against the Philadelphia Phillies. Cadence, first Sanchez is on the bump for the Phils. Nick Pivetta is on the bump for the Padres. Padres who find themselves as anywhere between about plus 140 to plus 150 dogs, minus 163 to minus 175. That number on the Phils, 8.5 is the total. Under is minus 120, and the over is even. And for the Padres at plus 148 or higher, was willing to take a shot here. Starting to see this pop up to about plus 150, and I'm going to be willing to dive in. I recognize that Nick Pivetta does have an ERA that is quite a bit demonstratively higher on the road rather than at home, but all in all, has been able to do a pretty solid job of holding down the fort. 3.36 ERA. He's getting about 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. Overall for the season, he's only allowing about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings as well. Now again, you take a look at the splits on the road, and on the road thus far this season, he's been posting up an ERA more than that neighbor at about a 4.50, and on the road he has been giving up north of 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. But you also have a Philadelphia Phillies team that, other than Kyle Schwarber, you don't necessarily have a ton of boom with this lineup. Schwarber has obviously been amazing. He's been able to give you 25 home runs, north of a 350 on base, but outside that, you've got Trey Turner with 11 home runs. Nobody else north of 9. You saw Bryce Harper dealing with injury, though I do believe that he returned on Monday. We'll see how sharp he's going to be these next few days, as I know that he's been trying to be able to work his way back. 9 home runs, about 200 at-bats as far this season, so hasn't been quite himself. Alec Boehm, Nick Castellanos, Turner, I mentioned before, only at least a 275. You've got Brandon Marsh, who's been able to hit about a 250 as well. So, and you got guys that are moving the line. And for the Phillies, they are averaging right around about 5.1 runs per game at home, while the Padres have been very pedestrian away from home, averaging fewer than 4 runs per game. Now you do have a trio of guys, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., Gavin Sheets. I'll give you at least 13 home runs this season. In the case of Tatis, Juan Machado, both north of a 345 on base, and Jake Cronenworth only for about a 240, but he's been able to move the line as well. It's been a case where the outfield has just been brutal, though. Like, they were relying upon Jason Hayward towards the beginning part of the season. That didn't work out. Like, so Brandon Lockridge and company did not work out. Martin Maldonado at the catcher spot has not been great. ERA. Bottom lineup, leaving something to be desired. Luis Arraez only hanging at 283. I say only because typically he does a better job of being able to get on base. Now the Padres bullpen has been very solid. Top 6 team with regards to bullpen ERA. Robert Suarez has been very shaky, blowing 3 saves over the last 2 weeks, but you got the likes of Adrian Morejon, Jason Adam, throw in there as well David Morgan, who have all been able to give you a sub-350 ERA. Jeremiah Estrada has been acting up a little bit, but it's a lot better than what you've got on the Philadelphia Phillies, who are currently in the bottom 8 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA, other than Orion Kerkering. Pretty much nobody else in this bullpen giving you a sub-350 ERA. Jordan Romano, Joe Ross, guys like this have been very brutal. And for Christopher Sanchez, absolutely locked down thus far this season, a 2.79 ERA, strikeouts per 9 rate that is hovering in the neighborhood about 10. He's going to be pulling about 2.7 walks per 9 innings. And when he's been at home this season, it's been very strange in that his ERA does balloon a little bit north of 3, so that's been something to watch. He's giving up right around about 1.1 home runs per 9 innings at home, but I do think that for Sanchez gives you a relatively solid start, but I do think that Pivetta does as well at a plus 149 or better. Looking at the Padres on the money line, and did somebody total at an 8.6. I do think that the Phillies start to see a little bit of spark on offense, so I'm going to be in on the over. 903, 904 on the betting board. The St. Louis Cardinals are on the road against Pittsburgh Pirates. Paul Skeens goes for the Buccos, and Andre 3000 Palante is on the bump for St. Louis. 7 is the total. Over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. For Pittsburgh, minus 160 to minus 172 is that number on them, between plus 140 to plus 145. That number on St. Louis. And with St. Louis, I did set them as an underdog of plus 164. If you're looking to lay a run F right now with the Pittsburgh Pirates, you're going to be finding that at some relatively good plus number. Plus 125 is what I'm seeing right now in the initial FanDuel opener. And at a plus 125 or higher, I'm willing to dive in. Skeens has just been absolutely remarkable this year. 2.12 ERA. Fielding independent is in the neighborhood of right around about a 250. He's giving up only 0.4 home runs per 9 innings. Leads all qualifying National League starters in terms of fewest hits allowed per 9 innings. The big issue they run into with Paul Skeens is just being able to get that run support from the Pirates, who they did put up a bunch of runs against the New York Mets over the weekend. 30 runs in that 3-game series. I don't think that Lightning is going to be striking twice, but they do get to go up against a guy in Andre 3000 Palante, who, let's call it what it is. He's not necessarily the Mona Lisa Vito of starting pitchers for Palante. He's not going to give you a lot of swing and miss. He's only been able to give you about 6.5 to 7 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's cut down on the walks a little bit, down to about 3 walks per 9 innings, 1.2 home runs per 9 innings, a 4.43 ERA, a 4.53 fielding independent, and he has given up 300 runs or fewer in each out of his last 4 starts. But for the Pirates, you're starting to get a little bit more out of this offense. Now you need a lot more with regards to the batting average, as even Oneil Cruz has been one of the best power hitters for the team. He, Henry Davis, Jared Trollo, Tommy Pham, Alexander Canario, all these guys hitting at 230 or lower. That's been brutal. And for this Pittsburgh Pirates team, it's now July, and entering into the day on Monday, only 3 guys had north of 4 home runs on the team. Brian Reynolds, Oneil Cruz, I mentioned before with his 15 home runs, and Andrew McCutchen. And on the flip side for the St. Louis Cardinals, it has been a touch-and-go lineup that is also in the bottom 8 in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per-at-bat basis. Alec Burleson, Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras, all between 10 and 11 home runs. And Burleson along Brendan Donovan are both hitting above a 250. Mason Wynn is starting to move the line as well. You've got a catcher spot that is a little bit more suspect with Ivan Herrera not on the injured list, but whenever you've had Pedro Paz out there, he's been able to give you a little bit of boom. He's been able to give you 6 home runs this season, and I do think that for the Cardinals, they're going to be able to do a solid job with their bullpen moving forward. Ryan Elsley had a relatively rough start to the season. He's already blown 5 saves, but Jojo Romero, Phil Matone, Kyle Leahy, these guys have been able to give you a sub-3.5 ERA, and as they've been able to rise up, so has the Pittsburgh Pirates with regards to their bullpen. For the Pirates, ever since May 1st, this has been a bunch that has been in the top 10 with regards to their bullpen ERA. David Benar has been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. You've been able to get some good innings out. Chase Sugar, when he's been out there, the former Dodgers and Dennis Santana, along with Caleb Ferguson, have been pretty rock solid as well. So a little bit of an interesting circumstance. I did set my total at 6.9. I think that Palante is starting to round into form a little bit, and I do think that after the Pirates were really able to bust out with their offense against the Mets, that they come back to earth. I do like the under, but at a plus 125 or higher, want to roll with that Pirates run line. 905, 906 on the card. The Milwaukee Brewers are on the road. They're facing off against the New York Mets. Clay Holmes is on the bump for the Mets. Freddie Peralta goes for the Brew Crew, and the Brew Crew is an underdog of between plus 108 to a plus 116, minus 128 to to -132. The number on the Mets, 8.5 to 8 is the total. On the 8, over is -120. The under is even. On the 8.5, the under is -120, and the over is even. And I did set the Mets at a -146. I'm going to be willing to back them on the money line. Recognize it's been a less than savory run for the Mets. I believe that they have lost 11 out of their last 14 games, but this is also a team that's 29-12 at home. Pretty much all of their struggles have been coming away from home, and Clay Holmes, while he's not necessarily lighting the world on fire with regards to his strikeout numbers, only about 7.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, he's keeping the ball in the yard. He's giving up 1 home run per 9 innings. I do think that there's going to be some Brewers regression. For the Brewers, they're averaging about 3.9 runs per game at home, bottom half of the big leagues with that regard. 5.65 runs per game away from home, leads all of baseball. I just don't think that this is sustainable, especially when their home ballpark in American Family Field is pretty much a league average with regards to their ballpark factor. Now for the New York Mets, the bullpen has fallen on a few tough times, but the top guys are the top guys. This is still an upper half of the big league scene with regards to their bullpen area. You've got the likes of an Oscar Brazoban, Jose Buto as long guys, give you a sub-3.5 ERA, Reed Garrett along with Edwin Diaz, also a sub-3 ERA. For the Brewers, this team continues to be about 20th in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. Feels like it's getting a little bit better. You've been able to have some good innings out of Abner Uribe, who's been able to give you a sub-275 ERA. Same goes for Trevor McGill. They've gotten Aaron Ashby off the injured list to be able to help out with that regard as well. And then for the Brewers, it's just been really interesting to look at this team and their overall run production on the road, considering the fact that they're in the bottom half of the big leagues with regards to home runs on a per-at-bat basis. And do have quite a few guys that are able to do a nice job in terms of swiping bags and being able to get in scoring position that way. Quartet of different guys with at least 12 stolen bases. Christian Yelich, Jackson Trio, Bryce Terang, Sal Frelick, and for Yelich, 16 home runs, 340 on base. He's rounded into form after a rough start to the season. And then you do have quite a few other guys like William Contreras, Bryce Terang, Isaac Collins. I'll give you north of a 355 on base, but for this Brewers team, outside of what you've been able to get out of Yelich, 2 other guys have really been able to give you north of 7 homers this year. Rhys Hoskins, along Jackson Trio, and Trio only about a 286 on base with the Brewers. I do think that they're going to be able to give you a little bit of something from the bullpen, but also with Freddie Peralta, I think that he's doing for quite a bit of regression. Right now, he's got a 2.90 ERA, but fielding independent is darn near a point higher. He has been giving up 1.2 home runs per 9 innings, about 3.3 walks per 9. His 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings sounds solid on the surface, but it's actually a career low for him, and I do think that for the New York Mets, they're going to do a good job of being able to get to him, as you've been able to have Juan Soto really run into form. He's now up to 20-plus bombs. He's giving you north of 385 on base, so he's been able to give you that, and you've got a quartet of different guys that have been able to give you at least 15 home runs, as you've been able to get that as well out of Mr. Brandon Nimmo. Pete Alonso continues to give you north of 17 home runs, north of a 380 on base. Francisco Lindor, a little bit hit or miss with regards to batting average ever since he suffered that injury that he's been playing through, but still doing a solid job on that front. And you've had a few guys towards the bottom of the fold, the catcher spot, along with Mark Vientos, guys like this, hitting below at 235. But I do think that for the Mets, they do go out there, get the job done against the Brewers. I did semi-total it at 8.4. Again, I expect the Brewers to regress a little bit with their road offense, so I like the 8.5 under and the money line of the Mets. 907, 908 on the card. The San Francisco Giants at third, they're facing off against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen looks to fill it up for Arizona, and Aiden Birdsong is on the bump for San Francisco, and San Francisco is an underdog of between plus 112 to a plus 118. Meanwhile, you're going to be getting between minus 130 to minus 137 on that number on Arizona. 9 is the total, the over is minus 120, and the under is even. And when it comes to Arizona, I did set them as the underdog of plus 104. I'm going to be willing to back San Francisco on the money line. Do recognize that things have gone sideways a little bit for our good friend Aiden Birdsong, but I still think that he's going to be able to go out there, give you a good start, 3+ runs allowed in each of his last 3 starts, but he's still been able to give you about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, about 3 walks per 9, 4.13 ERA. He's also backed up by a bullpen with a 2.91 ERA. Camilo Duvall, Randy Rodriguez, Eric Miller, throw in there as well, Tyler Rogers. I'll give you a sub-3 ERA. Spencer Bivens has been a relatively good long guy. And for the Diamondbacks, outside of Jalen Beeks, along with Shelby Miller, nobody in this bullpen has really give you a sub-375 ERA. The likes of Juan Murillo, Ryan Thompson, Justin Martinez, these guys are all having a rough go of it. 5.31 ERA is 28th in the big leagues, and Zach Gallen has really had his struggles this year. 5.75 ERA with 1.8 home runs allowed per 9 innings, north of 3 walks allowed per 9. I'm wondering if there's residuals from that big 2023 campaign they had where he threw more innings than any other pitcher in the big leagues, because that ERA goes up to a 6.29 at home, and typically he's much better at home rather than on the road. Now, what has been rock solid for the Arizona Diamondbacks has been this offense. They are a top 4 team with regards to runs per game. They are dealing with the injury to Corbin Carroll, but you still have Eugenio Suarez, who's been able to do a really good job of being able to crank it out for Suarez. He's been able to give you 25 home runs. All of a sudden, it's giving you a little bit more in terms of average as well, as he's been able to hit north of a 250. You got plenty of guys who are still moving the line. Josh Naylor, Geraldo Perdomo, both at about a 360 on base. Pavin Smith, a 375 on base. And then Ketel Marte of the Marte Parte. Home run every about 12 or so at bats, 405 on base. You do love to see that. For the Giants, this has been a rather pedestrian offense recently, even though they pick up Rafael Devers, who's giving you 15 plus home runs, north of a 380 on base. It's had a little bit of struggle since joining the San Francisco Giants, but this is obviously a Giants offense that has been able to do a little bit better when they've been away from home rather than at home, right around about league average for 4.3 runs per game away from home. You need Jungle Lee to pick it up. He's sounding below a 270, but Mike Yastrzemski has been pretty solid in terms of being able to move line. He's giving you north of a 340 on base. You've been able to get good production out of Eloy Ramos, 13 home runs. He's up to about a 355 on base as well. So I do look at the Giants as a team that should be able to get the job done here, and I felt like the Giants should be the favorite. Set them at a minus 104. I like the money line of San Francisco. I made my total 9.3, so here at the 9, I like the over. 909, 910 on the betting board. The Toronto Blue Jays playoffs to the New York Yankees as Mad Max Fried is on the bump for the Yankees. Kevin Gausman goes for Toronto. Toronto is an underdog between plus 138 to plus 145, minus 160 to minus 170. Then number on the Yanks, 8 is the total. Unders between minus 110 to a minus 115. Overs between minus 105 to a minus 110. I set the Yankees at a minus 152 on the money line. If you're looking to lay a run half with them, you're going to be finding them in that neighborhood about even money. I'm seeing a little bit of a very small plus 104 on the initial FanDuel opener, so this is a little bit of wait and see mode. If we can get down to about like a minus 110 in terms of getting a run half with the Blue Jays, by the way, I would not rule that out. And for the New York Yankees, Max Fried has been absolutely superb this year. A sub 250 ERA. He has given up 3 earned runs or fewer in all but one of his starts thus far this season. But as we know with the New York Yankees, it's been a little bit more touch and go with this offense, as they have scored now 4 runs or fewer going into the day on Monday in 14 out of their last 18 games. Aaron Judge continues to be magnificent. 30 home runs. He's going to be north of a 450 on base, but and that said, it's been the other guys like Paul Goldschmidt was having himself a really nice start to the season over the last month or so. That's been really toilet pulling a little bit on him, and you just take a look at what this team has been able to do here in the month of June. It's been a lot of those ancillary guys that have gone into a little bit of a rut, as in the month of June, Trent Grisham, just 2 home runs with a 222 average. Anthony Volpe hitting right around the middle side of 202. My point about Goldschmidt, $143 average in the month of June, so that's been an issue. Ben Rice has been having a little bit of a tough time because it is a Yankees team that does very much rely upon the deep ball to be able to get their offense generated. But what else has been big for the New York Yankees has been the fact that the bullpen has actually been able to rise up quite a bit. They were dealing with an injury to Luke Weaver towards the beginning part of the month, but he's back, as he, along Tim Hill, along with Yuri De Los Santos, have been able to give you a sub 275 ERA. Fernando Cruz has been solid out of this bullpen as well. Ian Hamilton is starting to give you a little bit more of something as well, and they do get to go up against a guy in Kevin Gausman that has had a rough go of it, as this man has given up now 3 plus runs in 7 out of his last 11 starts, coming off of one of his best starts of the season against the Cleveland Guardians, 6 plus scoreless innings, and he was really able to get things rocking and rolling there. But still, 4.21 ERA overall for the season. That does go down to a 3.72 fielding dependent, but even with that great start last time out, 3 plus runs allowed him 4 out of his last 5 starts. And for Max Fried, you know that he's going to be able to get the job done with a $1.92 ERA. I think that there's a little bit of negative regression coming from not necessarily the biggest swing and miss guy, 8.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, but still 0.6 bombs, 1.8 walks allowed per 9 innings. So I do think that you're going to get a good performance here from Max Fried. Kevin Gausman seems to be rounding into form a little bit, and I do think that this Yankees offense is going to be able to rise up just a little bit. So I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over. And you do have a Blue Jays team that is averaging in that neighborhood about 5.1 runs per game at below 4 runs per game away from home. So they clearly have some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. And for the Blue Jays, even though they are a bottom 7 team in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis, you're starting to get a lot more out of this lineup, as you've got Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., and George Springer. I'll give you at least 11 home runs this season. Springer a 360 on base, Vlad 385 on base, and quite a few guys that just find a way on base. Addison Barger is hitting at 260 along with Nathaniel Lukes. They both have good on base percentages. Bo Bichette is hitting at 270. Don't call his name Alejandro Kirk. He and Ernie Clement have both been able to above a 300. So if we can get up to about a plus 152 or so on the Blue Jays, I'd be willing willing to back them on the money line, or if we're laying minus 110 or better on getting a run half there, I would need at least a plus 111 to take a shot on that Yankees run line. So we'll see where things materialize as the overnight numbers come about, but also with this total of 8, I like the over. 9-11, 9-12 on the betting board. The Tampa Bay Rays are playing us to the Athletics, as Jeffrey Springs is on the bump for the Athletics, and the Boz, the Wizard of Boz, Shane Boz, goes for the Tampa Bay Rays. Rays do find themselves as favorites between minus 160 to minus 170, plus 138 to plus 145. That number on the Athletics, 8.5 is the total. Over is minus 115, and the under is minus 105. So my total 9.3. I do like the over for the Boz. He's looked a little bit better in his last few starts, but still it's been quite shaky overall for the season, and I do like Shane Boz. I do think that he's going to be a good pitcher in this league for quite a long time. Right now he is playing a 4.37 ERA, 4.52 fielding dependent with 1.4 home runs and 3.5 walks per 9 innings. So that's been a little bit of an issue, and for some of these Rays starters, they've actually been quite a bit better when they've actually been away from home rather than at home, because they had to switch on over to Steinbrenner Stadium for this season with the Trop being down and out. So that's been a little bit less than tremendous, to say the least. And for Mr. Boz, when he has been at home, a 5.70 ERA, giving up 8 home runs and 47 in the third innings. But you also get to go up against a guy in Jeffrey Springs who has not been tremendous. And I will say this for Jeffrey Springs. He has been posting up a sub-4 ERA on the road overall for the season, a 4.30 ERA, giving up 1.4 home runs, 3.3 walks per 9 innings, but it's also backed up by a bullpen that's dead stinking last in the big leagues in terms of ERA. Among guys who have made at least 7 appearances out of this Athletics bullpen, I think the only guy that has been able to give you a sub-4 ERA is Sean Newcomb, so it's been very much less than amazing there. Likes of Hogan Harris, Mason Miller, Grant Holman. Now they're trying out there Osvaldo Bido as a long reliever. They're just not getting the job done. And for the Athletics, you've got Brent Rooker and Tyler Soderstrom, who have been able to give you a combined 31 home runs this season. Rooker has been able to hit about a 270. They have a deal with Miguel Andujar being on the injured list, which has hurt just the overall moving the line, batting average for this team. But Jacob Olson continues to hit about a 380 in terms of on base, 340 average. He has been amazing. You've got Lawrence Butler up to a double figure amount of bombs, 13 stolen bases, big for a team that doesn't really steal a lot of bases. And Nick Kurtz, 12 home runs and 164 at-bats this far this season. That has been very good for this team. And then for the Tampa Bay Rays, all of a sudden, this team has been able to really bust out with their offense. They're now a top 6 team with regards to runs per game. You've got Junior Caminero along with Brandon Lau getting very loud. A combined 38 home runs between the two of them, and Lau is now hitting at 275. Yandy Diaz, 13 bombs. He's been able to supply you with about a 345 on base. Jonathan Aranda has been able to give you north of 400 on base as well. Do have Jared Calabreo, who's been a little bit banged up recently. He's been in and out of the lineup, but 29 stolen bags, 325 on base, and then Chandler Simpson, 21 stolen bases in just 41 games. He's been hitting at 290. He's been absolutely remarkable. And with the Rays, if you look at the overall season numbers, they're hardly above average with regards to their bullpen ERA, but it's because of the 22-run outburst that Baltimore put on them. They still have a lot of top guys like Eric Orze, Manuel Rodriguez, Pete Fairbanks, Garrett Clevenger. All these guys give you a sub-270 ERA. Kevin Kelly has been able to give you a sub-325 ERA as well. So I do think that they're going to be able to hold it down after you have a few runs given up by Shane Boz. Jeffrey Springs, I do think it's Little Blaze along with his bullpen. So I told 9.3. I like the over. And with the Rays, I did set their money line price at a minus 176. Now, if you're willing to lay a run half with the Rays, which I'm going to be willing to do so, you're finding that at a plus 115, at a plus 108 or higher, was willing to take that run line. 913, 914 on the betting board. It is the Orioles, and they're going to be on the road. They're facing off against the Walker Texas Rangers, as Jacob DeGrom goes for the Rangers. Brandon Young is on the bump for Baltimore. Total on this game is 7. The over is between minus 110 to a minus 115. Under is between minus 105 to a minus 110. And for Texas, they are anywhere between minus 173 to a minus 182. And between plus 148 to a plus 156 is that number on Baltimore. I did set the Rangers on the money line at a minus 187. I was willing to take pretty much even money or better with regards to this run line. Right now, that initial FanDuel opener is a plus 120, so sign me up there. Brandon Young has made only 3 starts this far this season with a 7.11 ERA, so many question marks there. Even with this Texas Rangers lineup that is currently in the bottom 6 of the big leagues in terms of runs per game, it just has not happened for the Rangers. But do have Corey Seager has been able to hit a home run in 2 out of his last 4 games, so they're starting to rise up a little bit there. Marcus Semien, Jake Berger, the currently injured Jock Peterson, Adolis Garcia, playing at 235 or lower than that, has a ton of power, has been less than savory, but they should be able to get to a guy in Young that just hasn't had a lot of big league experience. He might be able to give you a little bit of swing and miss. We've seen that at the minor league level, but again, we have not seen it at the big league level, and it's not like he's got some sort of a bullpen that has been magnificent behind him. For the Baltimore Orioles, currently a bottom 7 team in the big leagues in terms of that bullpen ERA. You've been able to get some good innings out of Felix Bautista when you get into a closer spot, and additionally, you've had Keegan Aiken as a little bit of a long guy be able to give you a sub-3 ERA, but the likes of a Matt Bowman, who has been in and out for them, Andrew Kittredge, Scott Blewett, got a whole bunch of guys posting up a north of 4.5 ERA. So Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto have actually been a little bit better recently, and then for the Orioles, I do think that this offense that is currently in the bottom 8 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game does rise up a little bit more for the Orioles, averaging fewer than 3.8 runs per game away from home. But you've had Colton Cowser along with Jordan Westbrook deal with injury all season long. They're now back at the fold for this team. You've had Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday combined for 19 home runs, and Henderson has been able to give you about a 350 or so on base. Ellie Rushman being on the injury list is rough, but Gary Sanchez has been able to pair of bombs over the last 8 or so days, and then Cedric Mullins being your top power hitter, 12 home runs with a 213 average. That's a little bit rough, but Ryan Oren, 11 bombs, 380 on base. And then for Texas, along with those struggling bats, you do have Wyatt Langford, who's been able to give you 13 home runs. Josh Smith has done a solid job in terms of being able to move line as well. And this is a Texas Rangers bullpen that does rank at the top 8 in the big leagues in terms of bullpen ERA. I really like these mix and match guys that they've been able to find, like Hobie Milner, Sean Armstrong, Robert Garcia. They've all been able to give you a sub 315 ERA. And for Jacob deGrom, if you look at the fielding independent, it is quite a bit better than the 208 ERA, and by better I mean higher, but I mean still, he's been able to be very locked down. Gave up a few home runs towards the early part of the season, but he's down to giving up about 0.85 home runs per 9 innings. His strikeout numbers are starting to rebound, 9 punch-outs per 9. He's only giving up right around about 2 or so walks per 9 innings. I think that he does a good job of going out there, shutting down the Orioles, so I do think that this is just a little bit too low of a total, especially with the Orioles bullpen, so my total is 7.7. I like the over and the Rangers on the run line. 9:15, 9:16 on the card. You've got the Kansas City Royals, and they're on the road against the Seattle Mariners, as Emerson Hancock is on the bump for Seattle. Michael Lorenzen goes for Kansas City. Kansas City does find themselves anywhere between plus 112 to plus 118 underdogs, and between minus 130 to minus 138 is Anaheim on Seattle, with 8 being the total. Over is minus 120, and the under is even. And for Seattle, I did set them on the money line at a minus 146. For Michael Lorenzen, it's just been an up-down all-around sort of season for him. He's posting up a 4.91 ERA. His fielding dependent, very much in line with that, with 1.6 home runs allowed per 9 innings. So he's not necessarily been amazing. What has been amazing, though, has been this bullpen of the Kansas City Royals. They're 3.55 ERA entering the day on Monday. That is 7th in the big leagues, as you've got a really good 1-2 punch in Carlos Aceves, Lucas Erceg. We're able to give you sub 250 ERA. Also been able to get good production of some of these mix and match guys, like Daniel Lynch has been able to give you a sub 3 ERA. You've had Steven Cruz come in, hold down the fort for you as well. And even from time to time, John Schreiber, it's been a little bit up and down for him, but he's been solid as well for the Seattle Mariners. They're a bullpen that is in the upper half of the big leagues in terms of their ERA. Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, along Gabe Spire have been able to give you a sub 3 ERA, and Emerson Hancock is probably going to need a bit of it, as he's got a 5.30 ERA with 1.9 home runs allowed per 9 innings this season. But for Emerson Hancock, if you look at him overall this season, he has given up 300 runs or fewer in all but 2 out of his last 12 starts, so he's been able to do a solid job there. He's just had a few outlier starts where he has just gotten completely destroyed. He had that 9 spot that he gave up against the Chicago Cubs when it was like 500 billion degrees outside, so that very much does warp his numbers. And you look at what Hancock has been able to do at home this season, it's actually a little bit worse than on the road, giving up 6 bombs in 29 and 2/3 innings. But now he gets a face-off against the Kansas City Royals team, as said last in the big leagues in terms of runs per game, averaging 3.3 runs per contest. Vinny Pascantino, Bobby Witt Jr. have both been able to give you a double-figure amount of homers, and you do have a few guys that do a solid job of finding way on base, moving line, as you've been able to get that certainly out of Bobby Witt Jr. hitting north of 270, and then additionally, Miguel Garcia, he's been able to give you about a 300 as well. You've got the likes of a Freddie Fermin, Drew Waters hitting north of 250 as well. Jonathan India is up to hitting about a 250 as well, but I mean, 4 home runs, you just expected a little bit more there. And Salvador Perez, 277 on base, is just not cutting it for this team. Meanwhile, for the Seattle Mariners, big dumper Cal Raleigh right now on pace to be able to set an American League record for home runs in a season, entering the day on Monday with 32 bombs. He and J.P. Crawford both give you north of a 380 on base. Julio Rodriguez, along with as well Miguel Rowdy Tellez and Ray Polanco, all with 11 home runs. Now, Tellez hitting for no average whatsoever, but Ian Rodriguez is now hitting about a 260. Polanco has been going down the toilet bowl a little bit, but you now have Randy Arozarena giving you north of 355 on base as well. I do think that for the Seattle Mariners, they do a nice job of being able to get to Mr. Lorenzen in the spot. I think that's a lower scoring game. I set my total at 7.3. I like the under, and for Seattle, I'm going to be willing to roll with a little bit of a chalkier money line, thinking it's going to be a bit lower scoring. 9:17, 9:18 on the card. The Minnesota Twins at the road, they're facing off against the Miami Marlins. Edward Cabrera's on the bump for Miami, and Joe Ryan goes for Minnesota. Minnesota is a minus 135 road favorite between plus 115 to a plus 122. That number on Miami, and 7.5 is the total. The over is minus 115, and the under is minus 105. And with the Minnesota Twins, I did set them on the money line at a minus 132, and if you're looking at laying around half with the Minnesota Twins right now, you're finding them in that neighborhood of about a plus 128, and I'd be willing to go with a plus 130 or higher. That's an initial FanDuel opener. I think we should be able to get to plus 130 when it's all said and done. And for Joe Ryan, you do want to take a little bit of caution that throughout his career, he's been giving up about 1.2 to 1.3 home runs per 9 innings when he's been at home. That does balloon up to about 1.6 home runs per 9 innings when he's away from home, but this is a guy in Joe Ryan that has been really doing a rock-solid job this season. 2.86 ERA, fielding pennant of a 3.22, 10.2 strikeouts to 2 walks per 9 innings, and he comes in having given up 3 earned runs or fewer in each out of his last 4 starts, and it is a Miami Marlins team that does rank in the bottom 5 of the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per at-bat basis. Kyle Sowers, Augustin Ramirez have both been able to give you 11 plus home runs thus far this season, but outside those two guys, you're just not getting a lot of boom. Now, I will say, you got guys that are able to find a way on base, like Xavier Edwards has been able to give you north of 360 on base. Dane Myers is hitting right in the neighborhood about a 300 as well. Even something like an Eric Wagaman has been able to hit 250, so he's been pretty rock solid. AC Sanchez, he's been giving you only about a 245 along Connor Norby, so could use a little bit more out of those guys, but all in all for the Miami Marlins, they do have some guys doing a nice job being able to find a way on. And then with the Miami Marlins, this has been a bullpen that's been rough to say the least. You've been able to get some good innings out of Anthony Bender along with Ronnie Enriquez. Both have been able to give you a sub 3 ERA, and Mike Picard has become a actually okay long guy, a sub 350 ERA. So that's all, but likes of Anthony Veziano, Calvin Fauché, Tyler Phillips, you've got a lot of guys posting up north of a 4 ERA. AC Sunoco before going on the injury list at north of 5 ERA. They've been trying to mix and match there, and you've got on the flip side a Minnesota Twins team that their bullpen started out really strong this season. Ever since May 1st, so they are a bottom 6 team in the big leagues in terms of bullpen area. This despite the fact that they still have some top guys, like you've got Yohan Duran, Brock and Roll Stewart, Louis Varland. All these guys give you sub 3 ERA. Danny Kalum has a sub 1 ERA, but it's more these long guys that have come in and just lit things on fire, like Griffin Jacks, Justin Topa, Cole Sands, give you north of a 390 ERA. And for the Minnesota Twins, Byron Buxton has seen a massive rise, 19 home runs, 350 on base. Love to see that. It is a bit of an unbalanced lineup, though, as you've only got one other guy on the roster who's giving you north of 9 bombs. That'd be Trevor Lawrence with 12 home runs. And though Cody Clemens gives you 9 home runs and 121 at-bats, only getting about a 215 this season since coming out the injury list. Matt Wallner has been absolutely terrible. Royce Lewis has dealt with injury all season long. And Carlos Correa now hitting about a 260, but not supplying a lot of boom either, so you do have a few question marks there. And for Edward Cabrera, the big question mark that you got is his command, as he's got really good swing and miss stuff. He's always got a lot of potential, but that said, in terms of Edward Cabrera, this is a man that overall for the season has been giving up right in the neighborhood about 4.1 walks per 9 innings, which is actually a career best number from 378 ERA, 405 fielding pennant, and he is getting 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. To his credit, it's really been rocking and rolling recently. I combined 600 runs allowed in his last 5 starts. I will say though, he has went 5 1/3 innings or fewer in 3 out of his last 4, so he's not necessarily lending a lot of length, which leads to bullpen exposure there. So it is an interesting circumstance. I did set my total at 7.8. I do think that both of these starters give you a good performance, but bullpens are less than trustworthy, so I like the over. And for the Twins at a plus 130 or higher, looking at that run line slash, if we're able to get down to more like a minus 132, we'll be willing to back that money line. 919, 920 on the card. You've got the Washington Nationals. They play also the Detroit Tigers. Captain Jack Flaherty is on the bump for Detroit, and Trevor Williams is on the bump for Washington. Washington does find themselves as a underdog between plus 130 to a plus 140. Meanwhile, minus 155 to minus 165 is that number on Detroit. 9 is the total. The over and the under are both at minus 110. And I did make that total a 9.1. I'm looking at the over for the Washington Nationals. They've actually got some very strange home and road splits with regards to their offense this year. As for the offense, they're only generating about 3.8 runs per game at home. That is 5th worst in the big leagues compared to north of 4.8 runs per game away from home. Recognize that Washington can sometimes play a little bit pitcher friendly, but I do think that is going to be ironing out a little bit more when it's all said and done, especially when you take a look at the overall power numbers of this team. As for Washington, they do have a little bit of a tough time finding guys to be able to move the line and get on base, though that has not been an issue for CJ Abrams. Abrams now hitting about a 285. He's supplying you with 12 home runs. And Nathaniel Lowe, though he's not hitting for a lot of average, he's up to 13 home runs as well. Your big guy is James Wood, 386 on base, 22 home runs. Very silently having a big season for this team. And then you got some like Akiba Ruiz, only about a 250 with not a lot of on base. Alex Call, when he's got an opportunity, says be able to give you about a 370 or so on base. And then Josh Bell, double figure amount of bombs, but again, not really reaching base with a sub 200 batting average. And the big trepidation that you got for the Washington Nationals, this has been a rough bullpen, to say the least. They're currently dead last in the National League with regards to that bullpen ERA. You do have Brad Lord and Andrew Chafin helping out Kyle Finnegan. Both of these guys have gotten down their ERA to a sub 350, but that's it. Likes of Jose Ferrer, Jackson Rutledge, Zach Brzezinski, whole bunch of guys from the with 5 ERA. They were trotting out their Ori Lopez. They had to cut bait with that regard. Ryan Lotus has been not great, to say the least. And for Detroit, if you look at the overall bullpen ERA numbers, they are a team that does rank in the more middle half of the big leagues with that regard, but the top guys are still the top guys. Brian Herder, Tommy Canley, Chase Lee, Will Vest have all been able to give you a sub 275 ERA. They're probably going to be on call in this one because Jack Flaherty has been acting up quite a bit recently, giving up 1.7 home runs per 9 innings. He's now up to giving up about 3.7 walks per 9 innings as well. 480 ERA, feeling independent, that's very much in line with that. But he is getting 10.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, so I think that he could be able to have some great success in this one. And for Washington, Trevor Williams, I think he's doing for a little bit of positivity. It's like not like he's giving up a whole bunch of home runs or anything like that. He's just giving up a lot of general contact and really doesn't fool you. 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, 2.3 walks, 1 home run per 9, 565 ERA, closer to a 385 feeling independent, but I mean, it has been a case where he's just been giving up hits upon hits. He's given up at least 6 hits in each out of his last 4 starts, and that was against the Rockies, the Miami Marlins, the Texas Rangers at home, and now on the road against Padres. So, yeah, that's not necessarily what you want to see, and he is going to be going up against a lineup that can do a pretty solid job of being able to put bat to balls. For the Detroit Tigers, this team is in the top 7 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. Trio of guys are able to supply at least 16 home runs. Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, and with Green, he's been able to hit darn near a 300. Avi Baez is able to hit about a 285 along Zach McKinstry and Gleyber Torres. So, I mean, these are not solo shots. They are turning into 2-run shots, 3-run shots. Even Cole Keith has been able to give you about a 330 or so with regards to that on base. And for the Detroit Tigers, I do think that Flaherty is going to give up some runs, but I think that he does a rock solid job of being able to give this team a shot in this one. Now, if you're looking at the run line in this game, I was willing to go up to about a plus 111 with regards to the Detroit Tigers. You're just not finding that big of a plus number right now. That's at even money. And as a matter of fact, if you'd be able to get like a minus 110 on the Nationals side, initial opener I'm seeing is minus 120, I'd be willing to take a run after there. Or if you get to a plus 144 or higher with the struggles of Jack Flaherty, we'll be looking at the Nationals money line. So what's all said and done, most likely looking at that Nats money line / run line. And with regards to the total, I'm willing to take the 9 over. 921, 922 on the card, the Cincinnati Reds. And yes, we're on to Cincinnati. They're on to the road to face off against the Boston Red Sox as Richard Fitz is on the bump for the Red Sox, and Brady Singer goes for Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a very small underdog here between plus 104 to minus 105, minus 115 across the board as that number on Boston. 9.5 is the total, over is minus 120, the under is even. Starting to see a 10 out there. That 10 has juice on the under of a minus 120, and the over is even. If I had to choose between a 9.5 to a 10, I would rather take a 10 under rather than a 9.5 over. So I'm hoping that we see some more 10s. And with the Red Sox, I'm going to be willing to back them. I set them at a minus 124 for Richard Fitz. Been a little bit of a rough go of it for him this season. He got demoted to the minor leagues for a little bit of time, dealt with some injuries. So he's right now rocking a 4.68 ERA. Big thing is he's been just giving up the deep ball. He has given up now 7 home runs in 25 innings, but it is a very small sample size. He gave up 0 home runs in 20 2/3 innings last season. So I do think that he's going to round into form a little bit, and I do think that for Richard Fitz, it's been a little bit of a matter of circumstance for him, and he gets to go up against a Cincinnati Reds team that really, other than Ellie De La Cruz, you don't have a lot of big boppers in this lineup. For the Reds, they actually are in the upper half of the big leagues in terms of runs per game, and getting back a guy that I really like and awesome to say is Kid, who's missed much of the season, hitting north of 280. That's big. De La Cruz, 22 stolen bags. He's been able to give you about a 280 along TJ Friedel, and Friedel north of a 370 on base. You've had Gavin Lux do a nice job job finding a way on north of 350 on base out of him. But some of these guys like Christian Encarnacion Strand, Reese Hines, that we expected to be able to bust out have not been able to do so. And for the Boston Red Sox, ever since they lost Rafael Devers, it's been rough with regards to their offense. Trevor Story, Weiler, Abreu are the lone two guys on the roster that are healthy right now, give you double-figure amount of bombs. Abreu's been able to put 250, and these mix and match guys like Rob Refsnyder, Abraham Toro, Rami Gonzalez, they're ain't north of 275. The young guys need to step up a little bit more. David Hamilton's been hitting below a 200. You've had Marcelo Meyer give you some homers, but he and Roman Anthony both hitting below a 225, but for the Red Sox, this has been a relatively solid bullpen. They're in the top half of the big leagues in terms of their ERA, and if you can get to Aroldis Chapman, he's been able to do a nice job, give you a sub-2 ERA thus far this season. But I mean, the mix and match guys like Greg Weiser, Justin Wilson have been able to give you a sub-3 ERA. Gil Woodlock having a little bit of a rough go of it, more of a 350 ERA for him as a long guy. And for the Reds, you've had Graham Ashcraft being a load of Ashcraft and being on the injured list, so that's been a little bit less than tremendous. Emilio Pagani, even though his ERA is relatively solid, gives up a lot of bombs. And then you've got the likes of Taylor Rogers, Tony Santillan, Brent Suter, all being able to give you a sub-335 ERA. For the Reds, I do think that they're going to be able to get a relatively okay start here from Brady Singer. It's been intermittent for him all season long. His walk numbers have been very much up. He's giving up north of 3 walks per 9 innings, which is a little bit uncharacteristic of him, and his overall ERA is a 4.31, field dependent, more like a 4.23, with giving up those 3.8 walks per 9 innings, but has given up 2 earned runs or fewer in 3 out of his last 4 starts. I do think that for the Red Sox, they get enough out of Fitz to be able to get the job done, set them at a minus 124, so I like that Red Sox money line, and I'm liking the under of 10. I set my total 9.7. 923, 924 on the card. It is the Braves, and they play off to the LA Angels, as Tyler Anderson is on the bump for the Halos, and Didier Fuentes goes for the Bravos, and the Bravos find themselves as pretty good-sized favorites. You're going to be getting them in that neighborhood of about a minus 165 to a minus 155, and between plus 135 to a plus 142. That number on the Angels, 9.5 is the total, over and under, both at minus 110, and I did set my total at 9.3. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under. Now, I don't have a lot of faith in Didier Fuentes whatsoever here. This guy got sent up to the big league level way too early. I have no idea why he's getting starts for the Atlanta Braves. Like, thus far for Fuentes, he's made 2 starts. He's rocking a nice hearty 10 ERA with 10 runs allowed in 8 1/3 innings, but I have to think that the hook is going to be very, very quick on him. This guy only made 1 career start at the AAA level, so again, just very befuddling that they went to him in this spot. And for Tyler Anderson, he is being absolutely rocked and rolled, as he's now up to a 4.41 ERA overall for the season, but he's now given up 3+ runs in 4 of his last 5 starts. This guy's been doing for regression for years, and he still is. 4.41 ERA, 4.99 fielding dependent, 1.6 home runs, 3.5 walks per 9 innings as a relatively non-strikeout guy, so that's not necessarily amazing. And what else is not amazing is this Angels bullpen that is currently in the bottom 5 of the big leagues in terms of ERA. They've been a little bit better recently, and Hunter Strickland has been able to give you good innings. He's got a sub-350 ERA, and Sam Bachman in a small role. He's been able to give you a sub-3 ERA as well, but pretty much everyone else in this bullpen, north of a 3.80 ERA, Brocken Rolber, Kenley Jansen, Jose Fermin, throw in there Ryan Zerfrian, Hector Neris. These guys have been not great to say the least, and it's just an all-or-nothing Angels team. This Angels team is in the top 3 in the big leagues in terms of home runs on a per-at-bat basis. They're also in the bottom 3 in terms of on-base percentage. Look no further than Taylor Ward, 20 home runs, but at 287 on base. Logan O'Hoppe, Joe Adell, combined 35 home runs. O'Hoppe at 265 on base. Now, to the credit of Joe Adell, 315 on base. He's starting to rise up. Zach Neto has been able to give you a 275 average, 12 home runs. Doesn't really hit the deep ball, but Nolan Schunel's been able to give you about a 360 on base. But even Mike Trout, he's hitting for only about a 230 this year with his 13 home runs. So, that has been a big issue for the team. And for the Atlanta Braves, this is a bunch that is currently in the bottom half of the big leagues in terms of runs per game, despite the fact that Ronald Acuna Jr. has been absolutely amazing for the team. For Mr. Acuna Jr., well north of a 400 on base. He's been able to do a nice job of being able to put back to balls. He's been able to give you 9 home runs in the first month or so. And he's been off the injured list. And then you do have Matt Olson, who's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with 15 home runs. He's up to about a 350 or so with regards to that on base as well. Austin Riley has been able to give you 12 home runs, but hasn't hit for a lot of power recently. And then you just need a little bit more out of these guys like Michael Harris and Lontazi Albies. Both of these guys hitting less than a 225. And for Harris, he's giving you a 238 on base with 6 home runs. That's not great. And then we've started on the flip side for the Angels, a sub 250 on base with less than 4 home runs, so that's not been great for the Braves. This has been a top 10 team with regards to bullpen ERA ever since May 1st, so they've been able to rise up there, even with Desmond Hernandez on the injured list. Dylan Lee is sub 2 ERA. The Dodd-father, Dylan Dodd, has actually been solid in relief as well. Aaron Bummer, Pierce Johnson, these guys will give you a sub 325 ERA, so I do think that for the Atlanta Braves, they do a solid job of being able to get to Anderson here. I do like the 9.5 under because I do think that the bullpen is going to be a little bit of a saving grace for the Atlanta Braves, and if you're looking to lay a run half right now with the Atlanta Braves, you're going to be finding that plus number relatively low. It's about a plus 115. I would need closer to about a plus 125, and heck, if you get like a minus 125 on getting a run half with the Alos, we'll be looking there. And for the Angels, if I could get a plus 150 or higher, which when it's all said and done, I do think I'm going to be able to do so, we'll be looking at them on the money line. 925, 926 on the card. The Cleveland Guardians are on the road against the Chicago Cubs. Matthew Boyd is on the bump for the Cubs, and Gavin Williams is going to be on the bump for the Guardians. Currently no total up in this game because the Wrigley Field win situation is a little bit TBD. I can tell you right now, I did set a relatively low total, but we'll get into that in a second. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the actual set money line prices for the Cubs, right around about minus 160 to minus 170, plus 135 to a plus 145, that number on Cleveland. And I set my money line price on the Cubs at a minus 166. If I can get a plus 120 or higher on that run line, which I think I should, I will be willing to take that. As I said, a total of 7.3. Wind is going to be blowing in, and it is going to be blowing in pretty heavily at about 10 or so miles per hour. So set a total of 7.3. 7 or less, looking at the over 7.5 or higher, the under. I would probably set it a little bit higher if it was a team not named the Guardians that they were playing, but for the Cleveland Guardians, this is an incredibly top-heavy lineup where you've got Steven Kwan along with Jose Ramirez, who've done a rock-solid job finding a way on, both hitting north of 295 entering into the series, and Ramirez, 13 home runs. You do have Kyle Manzardo who's giving you 13 home runs as well, but I need one of many guys that are just not moving the line and getting on base. Daniel Schneemann, Will Wilson, Nolan Jones, Lane Thomas, all these guys hitting below a 225. It got so bad that Brian Rocchio and John Kenzie Noel had to get sent down to the minor league level. David Fry has done nothing for the team this season, so I mean, it's been very rough. Carlos Santana, about a 330 on base with a single-digit amount of bombs, and it's not as if this Cleveland Guardians bullpen is what it was last year. Last year, they were number one in the big leagues in terms of ERA. Hunter Gaddis is all of a sudden very much acting up for the team, as Emmanuel Clase is actually rounding into form, sub 335 ERA out of him. And then you've had the likes of Kate Smith, Nick Enright, both be able to give you a sub 250 ERA. Getting back Eric Zabrowski, who was so good last season, that should be able to help out this bullpen. But I mean, for Hunter Gaddis, now north of a 3.8 ERA, so that's not necessarily amazing. And then on the flip side for the Chicago Cubs, ever since May 1st, this has been the number one team in terms of bullpen ERA in all baseball. I don't necessarily think it's sustainable because these guys have come from out of nowhere to be able to give you a sub 235 ERA. You've got Caleb Theobar, Chris Flexen, Ryan Brazier, throw in there Brad Keller, Daniel Palencia, Drew Pomeranz has yet to give up an earned run. Like, it's absolutely rampant what we're seeing out of this bullpen, but I do think that for Matthew Boyd, he continues to do a nice job of being able to lock things down. He's not as much of a swing and miss guy as he was early on during his career, but he's still solid in terms of giving you some swings and misses. He's been able to give you about 8 efforts, 6 strikeouts per 9 innings, and has really been able to cut down on the walks. Fewer than 2.5 walks per 9 innings as well, so I really love what he's been able to bring to the table all season long, about a 265 ERA, giving up only 1 home run per 9 innings, and with the Cubs, this team is number 2 in the National League in terms of runs per game, as you got Seiya Suzuki along Pete Crow Armstrong, both give you 21 plus home runs, and in the case of Crow Armstrong, 25 stolen bases as well. You've been able to get a lot of production out of Kyle Tucker, who's been able to give you 17 home runs. He's up to north of a 390 on base. You've had Michael Busch be able to give you 365 on base, so I mean, these are home runs that are not just solo shots because of the guys they're able to find a way on. Carson Kelly's even give you a 360 on base as well, so I do think that the Guardians can have their hands full here. And for Gavin Williams, it's been a case where the command just has not necessarily been amazing for him. Gavin Williams not giving you up like a whole bunch of home runs or anything like that, but he is posting up a 368 ERA that I think is going to be going northward with a 462 fielding independent, 1.2 home runs allowed per 9 innings, but again, 5 walks allowed per 9 innings. So at a 7 or less, looking at the over 7.5 or higher, the under plus 120 or higher, looking at that Cubs run line plus 167 or higher, would look at the Guardians on the money line. 927, 928 on the card. The Houston Astros hit the road. They're facing off against the Colorado Rockies. Chase Stolander is on the bump for the Rockies, and Colton Gordon goes for the Astros. Astros do find themselves as sizable favorites, anywhere between minus 163 to a minus 176, and between plus 140 to plus 150 is that number on Colorado. 11.5 is the total, over and under both at minus 110, and I did set my total at 12.2. I'm looking at the over. For Chase Dollander, he has just been getting rolled at home thus far this season. As for Mr. Chase Dollander, right now he is supplying the team with a 6.06 ERA with 2 home runs and 3.9 walks allowed per 9 innings. That goes to 2.7 home runs allowed per 9 innings and an 8.54 ERA when he is at home. So that's been an issue. And Colton Gordon, he's now giving up a little bit north of a home run per 9 innings, but he does a nice job keeping things out in front of him. A 3.98 ERA, 8.4 strikeouts, and 1.1 walks per 9 innings. And this is a Rockies lineup that is averaging just 4.1 runs per game at home this season. That's actually a bottom 10 mark in all of baseball. I think that they're going to be able to pick it up a little bit there. And for the Colorado Rockies, this has not been the world's worst bullpen in the big leagues, as you've had the likes of Vaughn Mejia, Victor Vodnik, Jimmy Harrigan, Jake Bird, be able to give you a sub 4.25 ERA. And Hunter Goodman has been really good at the catcher spot. 14 home runs, hitting north of a 280. You do have quite a few guys that continue to be hit or miss. You've had Jordan Beck be able to give you 10 home runs. And Mickey Moniak is up to 11 bombs as well. This is a team that at home they've been able to more than 40 points better at home rather than away from home, as Beck is now hitting about a 300 at home. Ryan McMahon, 270 batting average and 388 on base at home compared to on the road. He's hitting below the Bedell line of a 200. But for the Astros, it does feel like they're starting to find a little bit more of something at the plate as well. Jose Altuve, who got off to a relatively rough start to the season, he's now been able to supply the team with a double-figure amount of homers, hitting in that neighborhood about a 260 to a 265-ish. Jeremy Pena, he's been able to supply north of 300 average, 11 home runs. Isaac Paredes, 360 on base, 17 home runs. You just need to get a little bit more on base out of Christian Walker, Yanier Diaz, both of these guys outside of a 280 with regards to their on-base percentage. But I do think that for the Astros, they're going to do a nice job of locking things down as well with their amazing bullpen. You've got the Bryans, Brian King, Brian Abreu, along with Josh Hader as a closer, Sean Dubin, Steven Okert, Bennett Sosa. All these guys give you a sub 3.25 ERA, and I do think that they stifle the Rockies. I think that Dollander continues to give up a bunch of runs. Semi-total 12.2. I like the over, and I like the Astros on the run line up to a minus 158. Not saying the initial FanDuel opener, but I can guarantee you it's not minus 158. And we wrap things up with 9:29, 9:30 on the card. The White Sox are on the road. They're facing off against the LA Dodgers. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the bump for the Dodgers, and Shane Smith is on the bump for the White Sox. And the White Sox find themselves as very big underdogs between plus 257 to a plus 270, minus 305 to minus 335 is that number on the Dodgers. And if you're looking at that run line price, it is minus 152 on the opener. And I'm right now seeing a total of an 8.5 with the over at a minus 105 to a minus 110. And you're finding between minus 110 to a minus 115 on the under. And I'm going to be willing to ride with the Dodgers on the run line. I was willing to go up to a minus 166 for Yamamoto. He's actually had a little bit of a higher ERA when he's been at home rather than away from home thus far this season, and the walks are starting to creep up on him just a little bit. But all in all, this has been a guy that's been able to do a nice job of both being able to keep the ball in the yard and has been able to do a nice job with his strikeouts. 3.1 walks per 9 innings, but 10.1 strikeouts per 9, 0.9 home runs allowed per 9 innings. Has had a little bit of a rough go of it with 3+ runs allowed in 3 of his last 5 starts, but gets to face off against a Chicago White Sox team that's averaging fewer than 3 runs per game away from home. That is dead last in the big leagues in terms of their road overall scoring. And for the Chicago White Sox, just don't have a lot of power with this team. Like Miguel Vargas has been able to give you 10 home runs along with Andrew Benintendi, and that's pretty much all you've been able to get out of this team, as you do have a few mix and match guys that have found a way to be able to move the line, get on base. Mike Tauchman has been able to give you about a 370 on base. Chase Meadroth has been able to hit about a 265 along with Lennon Sosa. Edgar Quiero, when he's been out there, has been okay as well, but just so many guys give you so many dead at-bats, and it's not even funny. Matt Theus, Michael A. Taylor, Brooks Baldwin, Vinny Capra, Joshua Palacios, Luis Robert, when he's been at the big league level because they sent him down to the minors, Andrew Vaughn. All these guys hitting a 215 or lower, and for Robert, 22 stolen bases, but hitting a $185 with a single-digit amount of homers. And for the LA Dodgers, this team is number 1 in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. They've been able to supply at home north of 6 runs per contest. Shohei Ohtani just continued to do Shohei Ohtani things, north of 28 home runs, north of 385 on base. But then you've got Teoscar Hernandez along with Andy Paz, a pair of guys who have been able to hit for a combined 30 home runs this season. For Teoscar Hernandez, doesn't necessarily draw a lot of walks, but he's been able to hit north of a 265. Max Muncy over the last 35 days, well north of a 400 on base. He's up to 13 home runs. You've been able to get good production on Freddie Freeman, give you a 386 on base. Will Smith getting jiggy with it, north of a 400 on base as well. Mookie Betts has honestly been a little bit down this year, and for the Dodgers, it's about a league average bullpen in terms of ERA. You've had a guy that I really like to begin the season, Ben Kasparis, have essentially become a bulk guy for Shohei Ohtani at this point. But then you've got Jack Dreyer, Alex Vesia, Lou Trevino, all supplying a sub 335 ERA. You're getting Michael Kopech off the injured list. He has yet to allow a run since coming off of the IL. And then for Chicago, you've actually gotten some relatively good starts out of Shane Smith overall this season. He's starting to regress a little bit, which I thought that he was going to because he has been giving up a few more walks than what I'd like. He's been giving up a little bit north of 3 walks per 9 innings, 338 ERA, 378 fielding, depending closer down 4 walks per 9 innings, but he's keeping the ball in the yard, 0.6 home runs allowed per 9 innings. Again, he's given up now a grand total of 10 earned runs in his last 2 starts, but I do think that he's going to be able to be doing for some positivity. And what I think is very interesting about Shane Smith is that he's actually performed a whole heck of a lot better when he's been away from home rather than at home. 4.12 home ERA, 2.55 ERA on the road, giving up just 3 home runs in 35 1/3 innings. Not necessarily backed up by the world's greatest bullpen, though, as you've had Mike Vasil go from being a really good long reliever to now being a little bit more of a bulk guy, so they've been looking to do a little bit of mixing and matching there. Jerome Leisure gives you about a 4 or so ERA. A few guys have been able to do a nice job rising up for this bullpen, as Steven Wilson, Dan Altavilla, both of these guys have been able to give you a sub-2 ERA, but then when you get into the likes of Owen White, Cam Boucher has been a little bit banged up, thrown there, as well as some like a Frazier Aller. These guys have been posting up well north of a 4 ERA, so I do think that this is a circumstance where the LA Dodgers do a nice job of being able to get to Smith. They get into that bullpen, but I think that Yamamoto shuts down the White Sox, so I'm going to lay that run line with the Dodgers and maybe my total in 8.3, so I'm in on the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Chris Cichon. He does great work over at WBAL in Baltimore. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to further this in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Lerzium, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season, so that means I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.